This is Hannibal from thehannibaltv.com, back with a UFO news update, and I'm a little late on this one, but I have been researching it every day, and we'll talk about it. I'll first of all point this out because I found this funny. The U.S. Congressional hearings on unidentified anomalous or aerial phenomena made pretty big news in the U.S. And this is pretty much all it made in Canada's capital newspaper here in Ottawa, Ontario. Not even a picture, a little blurb. And I live in the equivalent of Washington D.C. of Canada, so it's not as hot a topic in Canada. Even though I'll just bring up as it's related to unidentified aerial phenomenon. If you guys remember, not too long ago, believe it was in March, there was that Chinese weather balloon shot down, and then there was three mysterious UAPs shot down. One was over the Northwest Territories, and one I believe was also in Canada as well. And those other three, the one was definitely identified as the Chinese weather balloon. They've provided footage of that being recovered, and supposedly there's footage of it being shot down. The other three objects, and I'm not saying that they were out of this world, but like we're just supposed to trust them that they supposedly never found what those were, even though they sent missiles that were worth like $700,000 each after them. I don't know. That's bizarre. But let's just talk about this U.S. congressional hearing. There's basically three people going on record. Ryan Graves, former F-18 pilot for the Navy, said he'd witnessed advanced flying objects demonstrating complex maneuvers that did not seem like anything either the U.S. in some type of secret program could produce or its adversaries could produce. Now Ryan Graves, very credible guy. He's not saying anything other than these things were being witnessed on a regular basis during flight training, and he actually witnessed some of these himself. So that's what he was going on record for. He was one of the least controversials, but basically saying these things are a flight risk. People are afraid to report them. There's also close calls apparently with commercial airlines, and apparently commercial airlines report them even less than military because people are afraid to lose their jobs. The commercial airlines don't like the negative publicity of the UAPs because technically they're putting passengers in danger. And then, of course, there was Graves. I mean, I'll say a few notes from this article. He said military and civilian air crews are making credible reports of unidentified objects within U.S. airspace with regularity. Then, of course, another extremely credible guy who we've all know him from the Tic Tac incident was retired Navy Commander David Fravor, who described in detail his experience of his encounter with the white Tic Tac shaped object after launching his fighter jet from the USS Nimitz in 2004. He said, quote, "There were no rotators, no rotator wash, or any visible flight control surfaces like wings." He said on the record. So these aren't just interviews. These are U.S. congressional hearings under oath. And David Fravor, for instance, is as credible as a guy as you can get. He's like 20 years in the military. He still works in defense. And he's saying he only had this one experience. He's heard of other people having other experiences. but he said he believes these things are a threat based on. He didn't feel that the Tic Tac was a threat. He felt that it was benign, could have been gathering information. He's not sure what it was there to do, but he said had it been a threat, he didn't feel there was anything he'd be able to do about it. And there has been issues with these things giving problems with radar. And one of these things that all the military people say is part of the reports should be the radar files that actually give information about how these things are traveling, because they're transmedium. They're in space, in our atmosphere, and underwater. And they're doing this in split seconds. Who knows what's going on underwater? It's all very interesting to me. But David Fravor, both him and Ryan Graves, sorry, were the two least controversial because they were going based on fact and videos that have been released. The more controversial one, and I've already done a full report on his interview with News Nation about a month or so ago, was from another gentleman, David Grush, who I just mentioned, who is a retired U.S. intelligence official who had been in charge, or one of the people in charge of the task force investigating UAPs in the U.S., and he was with the government till about April, and now he's an official whistleblower. So he's giving a lot of information that supposedly he's been cleared to say. There's some of it that he could not say openly, or it will violate his confidentiality notices. Some of the congressmen and congresswomen said they wanted to talk to him in a skiff, which I guess is a closed setting where there's no recording devices or anything allowed in, and people with similar security clearances are allowed to go into these places and have off-the-record conversations where they can then go and do more investigating on their own. Supposedly, Grush was denied getting into a skiff with at least one of these congressmen because his clearance is no longer intact with the military, because he's no longer with the military. But he's making a lot of claims. He's saying that the U.S. has basically recovered vehicles and bodies of out of this world beings, and he's saying that there's numerous programs involved in reverse engineering some of these craft that have crashed, and he used the description, how do these advanced things crash? Well, there's always going to be things that crash. There's always going to be cars that crash here and there. There's always going to be planes that crash. Just because a civilization is so advanced doesn't necessarily mean that there's not going to be accidents here and there, and things aren't going to be recovered. So these are his claims that he's saying he has provided information to through the correct sources that aren't going to get him in trouble, where more of this stuff is going to be investigated, and hopefully more of the truth will come out. He feels that the government is not being honest with the citizens, and that a lot of these private companies, apparently like $400 billion a year is given to private military contractors, and very few, if any, are audited for what this money goes to actually doing. So he's basically saying some of these contractors, private contractors, are in possession of these craft and are reverse engineering them, and tax money is going to that, and we're not allowed to know about that. He's not saying we should know about everything, but he's saying there should be more transparency. So that remains to be seen. The government, some government agencies have already tried to bury Grush, but Again, he's made the formal complaints. He has whistleblower status. We'll see as time goes on what happens with that. Jake, how do people in 2023 not believe in extraterrestrials? Well, I don't necessarily think they got to believe in extraterrestrials, but there's definitely proof and many people going on the record saying that there's stuff in the skies that are unidentified and are not necessarily objects that are from this world that show technology far beyond what we have. Apparently, and one of the things that Grush talked about in his interview as well, and I brought this up before, there was actually a pact signed between the U.S. and Russia in the 70s, an agreement that's since been declassified, where they're supposed to notify each other if there is certain things picked up in the sky that they're not sure necessarily are Russian or U.S. They don't want to. In other words, they don't want to cause World War III. There's some sort of an agreement between the U.S. and Russia where they'll notify each other if there's unidentified aerial phenomena in the air or doing strange things. I mean, military people have gone on the record saying they have affected nuclear warheads in the operation of nuclear bombs, basically being able to be set off. One apparently, at least one was almost not accidentally set off, but purposely was going into the mode where it was starting to be set off by one of these things. So there's a lot of weird stuff involved. It seems like we're either being examined, like spied on, or examined. These things have been doing it for forever, it seems. But obviously now with greater technology, we're seeing it more. But either that or we're somehow being manipulated by these things, or they're actually somewhere on this earth and we're actually sharing earth with them, or who knows if they're underwater or what. Who knows if they're actually from outer space. Nobody really knows on the record where these things are from. There's a lot of theories, but I'm curious to find out more information. Ancient astronaut theorists say yes. Now that's the theory that these a lot of these chariots of the gods and stuff, like a lot of gods, were based on aliens, and there I've heard talk of this too, that the aliens perhaps actually presented themselves as gods to earlier civilizations and actually caused. This is one theory that I've heard Tom DeLonge talk about from Blink 182, who's been investigating this stuff for a long time and is from To the Stars Academy, but that different beings present themselves as different gods to various humans and actually cause human conflict. But who knows? There's theories that they want us to constantly be in conflict, so we're not paying attention to them because we're fighting each other, because our own world doesn't even have the same intention. So for the people that think visitors from not just one necessarily planet or place, but from the entire universe can all have the same intention. There could be benign ones, there could be ones with negative intentions, there could be some with positive intentions. We've heard reports that some have environmental messages, but we've also heard reports of cattle mutilations, animal mutilations, and some human mutilations. Some humans have been injured by various UAP-related things. So there's a lot going on. Apparently, a lot's being hidden, including from Congress. One congressman testified that they went down to an air base in the Gulf of Mexico to investigate a military UAP sighting, and they actually had issues getting information from the base regarding what it was, to where they had to have a conversation about authority to get more information. And apparently this one involved like a UFO the size of a football field. So there's a lot of unusual stuff going out. Off topic, in a shoot fight, who would win between Haku and Steve Blackman? If it's a street fight, probably Haku. If it's a MMA rules match with a referee where biting and grabbing the throat and ripping the nose and rip the eye out is illegal, probably Blackman. But anyways, guys, tell me what you think about the UFO hearings in the comments. Very interesting stuff. As I said, I've listened to it 3 times. The whole UFO Congress. I find it amazing that the U.S. Congress is so interested in finding out more about UAPs, when not too long ago this was a very taboo topic. And I've only been interested in this stuff since about 2013, when the government of Canada officially acknowledged that more of these sightings were occurring, but due to budget restraints, they claimed they weren't going to investigate them themselves. They were going to rely on amateur enthusiasts and astronomers to do their own research. I asked the Honorable Paul Hellyer, former defense minister, about that report, by the way, that I saw about the government of Canada in 2013, that first caught my attention about UFOs, when they were admitting that these things were happening. And Paul Hellyer, who's since passed away, in a very famous interview with me, that's in several movies now and appeared on the Gaia channel as well. The Gaia channel. Anyways, he told me there's no way that the Canadian government wouldn't be interested in unidentified aerial phenomenon in their airspace. They're not just going to ignore that. So, interesting stuff. Thanks for tuning in. And please put your comments in the comment section. We're going to cover more UFO news, because I'm fascinated by it. Find it really interesting. Time for a new voice on the subject. I don't know if I'm a new voice on the subject. I try and be neutral. I don't claim to know everything. I'm not. One of the people I don't trust in that industry is Dr. Stephen Greer, who makes a fortune claiming that he can communicate with aliens, but he's provided very little credible evidence. And people like that muddy the waters of the more credible people that aren't in it to make money, that are in it for the good of the citizens, and that want disclosure. So, I mean, I try to be neutral in it. I don't know what these things are. I've never seen a UFO. I've never seen an alien, other than on videos. I don't know what they are. I think that there's a possibility they could be from this planet, in areas of this planet that we haven't discovered. I don't know, where they could have bases, because they sure appear to go underwater a lot. And there's a lot of our own planet that we haven't discovered, and it would make a lot more. It would be a little bit more easier to swallow than coming from planets light years away. However, I did notice some experts did bring up that like it's billions and billions of light years away would be the nearest inhabitable planets. When that's not actually true. It's closer than that. But who knows where these things are coming from. Do I believe in the paranormal? I've had a ghost experience that I've talked about on this that made me a believer in ghosts. I had my own near-death experience recently. Nothing. I didn't experience anything afterlife related during my recent near-death experience. Nothing at all. For Stephen Greer, someone is bringing up, he seems to know a lot, but he's also doing a lot of weird contact meditation. I mean, he charges people for these trips in the desert that he goes on, and I don't buy. He tries to blame a lot of this stuff on conspiracy. He's a conspiracy theorist, and he's also a sect leader. Literally, look up the definition of a sect leader, and you'll get Stephen Greer. I used to find him a lot more credible, but now he's really gone off. But David Grush, I mean, these guys that testified at the congressional hearings, they all are very credible. Grush has had the least substantiated claims at this point, but we're only at the beginning of people looking into them. Would I like to talk to an? I would love. You know what? And I've said this, and I'm not just saying this because of what recently happened with me. I'd be happy to be abducted by aliens, and that would be the end. Because at least that would satisfy my curiosity on if they exist or not, and I'm fascinated by them. I would not be afraid. I mean, I remember when I interviewed Travis Walton, the alleged alien abductee. He wanted me to rent a cabin out in the middle of Snowflake, Arizona, which is way up in the mountains of Arizona, where he was allegedly abducted. And I remember that was a long day, and I'm not going to get into the difficulties I had actually pulling off the interview, but it was a long day. And when the interview was finally done, there was a hot tub in the back of this cabin, and I remember I was by myself. My ex-wife was asleep in the cabin. The camera guy was asleep in the cabin. I was by myself, looking out this hot tub in Snowflake, Arizona. There's sagebrush everywhere. We always hear reports of aliens coming out of sagebrush. It was a very ominous and spooky night. And I remember, like, just sitting in that hot tub. For one thing, that interview has almost 1 million hits now. Being very satisfied with the interview, and after the stressful day and the expense that I took going out there, that I pulled it off. But just looking out there, hoping that I would have some type of experience like that. But I just remember, like, Snowflake, Arizona. It's a very, like, movie-ish like place. If you don't know Travis Walton, he was the one that Fire in the Sky was based on. That whole Snowflake, Arizona has an aura about it, and because it's associated with that movie, they're very, like, pro aliens, and it was just weird. I just remember that night, and I'm only answering this for the guy that was wondering would I be scared. No, I just remember looking out there, saying, "Man, I wish I could have something like this happen." I don't fully believe Travis, because he contradicted himself a little bit from my interview and the interview he did with Joe Rogan a couple years later. But he did definitely seem to have PTSD a bit from the incident. So I don't know if I believe everything of Travis, but he definitely had some type of unusual incident that happened. Lord Aghast remembers that interview. That interview was one of my hardest interviews, as was the Paul Hellyer. Paul Hellyer was my favorite interview I ever did. And as I said, it's literally been in a UK movie, the Gaia Channel, and it's about to be on this new US syndicated TV show, where I did an interview about the whole process of doing that interview with Paul Hellyer, who is the highest ranking government official I've ever interviewed. But I would love to do more interviews in the alien domain. The only problem is there are some people, and you guys have seen some of them on this channel, that are too far out there, and I don't actually believe. I like guys like Avi Loeb. Avi Loeb, the Harvard professor who has Project Galileo going on right now, who who believes this kind of stuff is happening in a way, but he wants the scientific proof. So it's credible people like that I want to talk to. And I hope I do get more information about that. Who do I find the most credible within the UFO community? The guy that witnessed the Tic Tac. But as far as the people that talk about it, I think George Knapp is balanced. He's a balanced reporter. He's not making stuff up. He'll tell you fairly unbiased. I like some of the Jeremy Corbet stuff. I don't fully not one way or another with him, but he's definite. He's released some great footage. But some of the things he says are quite out there. But I'm not anti Jeremy Corbet. Tom DeLonge, he knows so much about this subject, and he's probably one of the people I'd want to interview most, and I hope I can get a Tom DeLonge interview one day. He's spent so much money researching this subject, and he's talked to such high rank. There's a lot of stuff he can't say, but he knows a lot, and I don't think he's been interviewed enough about it and he needs to be interviewed by someone like me, honestly, I've heard all of Tom DeLonge's interviews on UFOs numerous times. I'm fascinated by what he has to say about it. He had to say actually in one interview about what one of their concerns might be about nuclear weaponry is because apparently we've shot off nuclear weapons into space in the past, and it may have interfered with some of their craft. And we've also shot nuclear weapons off for testing underwater, and it may have interfered with some of their craft. I've heard him say that can very well be their interest in that. There's people like Greer that say, "Oh, don't worry that they're turning on and shutting off our nuclear devices. Don't worry about that. They're all friendly. Trust me." I don't think so. I don't think so. Alfred across. Very excited talking about this subject. This is my favorite subject to research. I research this every single day. Anyways, guys, sorry for the wrestling fans, but great progress with this UFO hearing. No matter what you think about it, if you're someone that's interested in UFOs, or what is called now unidentified anomalous phenomenon, and anomalous is because they're seen underwater too, not just aerial. They've changed it again. And it makes even more sense because they go underwater. A lot of people did not know that until recently, that these things go underwater, which is crazy. And apparently they can go at extreme speeds underwater as well. But it's a very, very interesting topic. Yeah, I have got some responses from Tom's people, but maybe I gotta work a little harder on that one. I mean, he is a big celebrity that's also still on tour with Blink-182. I actually did security for him. One of my first ever security jobs was at Edgefest 2001. The Ottawa Civic Center. I did security for Blink-182, and there was a hell of a mosh pit that night. It was a great way of popping my cherry. I'm not a massive Blink-182 fan, but as a guy that knows a lot about UFOs, Tom DeLonge is one of the people. I mean, his name was brought up in this hearing. I mean, this guy knows a lot. And let's hope I do get that interview. I guarantee you guys, if I ever get that interview with Tom, I will not let you down. I will do the best UFO interview ever with him. Have a great Sunday night. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and